Hello everyone, I'm Marcela Fernandez, and today I will be interviewing Dr. Brett Simmons. He's currently a professor at the University of Nevada, Reno, and he blogs, teaches, and practices leadership skills. So to begin with, what are some common traits found in effective leadership?
Okay, so common traits. You know what a trait is? A trait is like a personality. So traits are stable. They're not subject to change. I mean, you've got a trait or you don't have a trait. So looking at the most recent research on traits and behaviors, it's a 2011 article published in Personnel Psychology, very well done meta-analysis, which meant they looked at over 100 studies of traits and behaviors to predict effectiveness. What they found in terms of traits was the single best predictor, the single best trait predicting leadership effectiveness was something called conscientiousness. Conscientiousness is part of the big five personality characteristics, and it really means that you pay attention to details, you're concerned about the work that you do, you complete your work on time, and you complete it thoroughly. So, I mean, that's kind of a no-brainer. Conscientious people are better performers, and so conscientious people, as they're better performers, are going to become leaders and be better leaders. Now, they found a couple of other traits that were associated with leadership effectiveness. One of them was extroversion. Obviously, the leader needs to interact with people and form relationships. Not saying that introverts can't do that, but extroverts might be a better predictor of that. And agreeableness. In terms of if you have an agreeable personality, you're more likely to be able to get a group of people to gel together and work together. But when people are looking at leaders and evaluating who they think effective leaders are, they tend to say that people that are conscientious and extroverted are better leaders.
Okay. And it's my understanding that conscientiousness as a trait can have some drawbacks. Could you please tell us a little bit about that?
It can have a few drawbacks. There's some other research out there that shows that studied conscientiousness in CEOs and how they make strategic decisions. And although conscientiousness is really good and we want conscientious people, sometimes in a CEO, if you're conscientious, you can be so focused on what you want to do and what you want to get done that you lose flexibility. And as a CEO, you need to have some flexibility to be able to direct your organization in different directions given the opportunities and threats that arise in your environment. So sometimes highly conscientious people can be very rigid as they're very focused on completing their goals. So that is a surprising drawback to conscientiousness.
Okay. So those were the traits. What are some of the behaviors that influence effective leadership?
Okay, so going back to that 2011 meta-analysis, the behavior that they found was the most common predictor of effective leadership when they were asking other people, do you have an effective leader, was something called transformational leadership. And so that's a term you're kind of familiar with. Transformational leaders are those that are inspiring others. They kind of have a vision of where they think the organization or group needs to go, and they help the group see that vision, and they help the group get inspired to move towards that vision. And through their behaviors, they enable people to accomplish that vision. And that's in contrast to a transactional leader that just says, here's your job, go do your job. Call me if you need me type of deal. So the transformational leader type behaviors are, they have a vision they're working toward and they're inspiring people to work toward that vision. That was the best predictor among the behaviors.
Okay. Between behavior and traits, which would you say is the strongest predictor of effective leadership?
Well, I would have said it even before the study came out. I mean, for a long time I've been saying that traits are not, and based on the research, not a really very consistent predictor of leader behaviors. This study confirmed it, that the strongest predictor of leadership effectiveness was behaviors, especially transformational leader behaviors. And that's good news, because you can't change someone's traits. You can't teach someone to be more conscientiousness or more extroverted, but you can teach them to be more transformational. We can teach people to behave in ways that are more effective. So that's good news. And so, the bottom line is leader behaviors are more effective than leader traits.
Okay. In the classes that you have taught, could you immediately pick a student you believe would be more successful than others? If so, is it due to traits or behaviors?
That's really an interesting question. You can't immediately pick it out. but you can see it over time. I mean, as I watch, and I watch behaviors, and the behaviors are driven by the traits. So your personality will affect your attitudes. Your attitudes will affect your behavior. And that's really what I can observe in a classroom. I observe how you behave. Now, if you come talk to me, and I can begin to hear some of your personality traits, but in the classroom I'm generally watching how people behave. And it's really kind of a conscientious behavior. Conscientious people show up, they show up on time, they're prepared, and they give their best effort when they're there. I mean, that is the key to success in the work environment. If at work you ain't showing up, when you show up, you're not prepared, you don't give your best effort, you're not going to be a very successful performer. If you're not a successful performer, you're not going to be a successful leader. So I kind of look for those things in the classroom. Who's really engaged and who's assuming self-responsibility for being engaged. And I can tell that. Some people come to class and they wait to be engaged. It's like it's your job to engage me. No, it's your job to engage yourself and to assume responsibility for exhibiting the right behaviors.
You provide guidance to hopeful CEOs, VPs, and executive management in your MBA courses, hoping to instill beneficial leadership behaviors. What advice would you provide to these hopeful leaders who do not possess typical leadership traits?
To these leaders that don't possess typical leadership traits, well, the good news is you can learn to change your behavior. So you can learn to be more transformational. The best advice I could give them would be to develop your future leaders. So maybe you're a leader and you're kind of limited on where you're at. That doesn't mean that you can't take action to grow leaders in your organization, because you're not going to be there forever. And that's part of your responsibility, is to grow the next generation of leaders. So my advice based on the research would be hire people that are as conscientious as you can find. I wouldn't hire people that I didn't have a reason to believe were very conscientious. And I would select for that. I'd have a selection tool where I had questions that were designed to pick out how conscientious you were. So I'd be looking for conscientious people, and then as I watch them over time in my organization, I want to know that they can relate well with others, that they work hard to master their given responsibilities, that after they master their responsibilities, they assume it upon themselves to try to improve the work environment, that when things aren't working right, they come with solutions instead of complaints, and that they respond well to change. Because the work environment has changed a lot, and it's going to continue to be very dynamic, and people that can't respond well to change, they're just not going to be good in our organizations. They're certainly not going to be good leaders.
Okay.
So hopefully you found that helpful.
Yes, I did. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.